Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Today is Friday, November 25, 2011. I am speaking with Dr. Prakash Bali of Lompoc, California, but the interview is being done in New York City. Dr. Bali, where did you grow up?
I was born in Rawalpindi,
The city
Pakistan.
itself? City itself?
Rawalpindi city itself.
Okay.
And I was born in the May of 1938.
Okay.
And I grew up up until the partition of India in that case.
Now, I just thought before I go forget, you're a professor of, you're a retired professor of English here, right? Okay. But before, we'll come back to that. But tell me, how was the neighborhood like? Do you remember the name of the neighborhood? Name of your address or anything like that?
In Pakistan?
Yes, in Rawalpindi.
In Rawalpindi, we lived in a generally very prosperous neighborhood. There were only 3 or 4 pretty affluent houses, double-story buildings.
Beautiful.
And
how many rooms?
They were recently built on the outskirts of the city. Quite close to what is now called Islamabad.
Oh, I see. Now, who built it?
My grandfather, who was a senior military officer, who had retired from the army.
British Army. Now, and who else was living in the house?
At the time, it was my grandfather, my grandmother, my mother, and hardly anyone else besides
children,
myself, and my younger brother, and 2 sisters.
Okay. So, did you go to school there? How was the society like? Can you tell us a little bit at that time?
Well, in my first grade, I went to a Hindu school, a Sanatan Dharm school.
What's the name of the school?
Sanatan Dharm.
Sanatan Dharm school. Okay.
Which was about 2 miles away.
Okay.
But in the last few days, because of the riots that had just started, we were withdrawn from the school.
That was in 47?
That was about early 47.
Oh, early 47.
Right. The riots had already, the rumors had started. Some houses had been already put on fire.
Have you seen it for yourself, or have you?
I have.
Okay.
And there were pretty serious rumors, but the most violent rumor was that when our dairyman stopped coming, we heard that he had been beheaded.
Oh.
He was a sick gentleman, quite elderly, and not only that, but his head has been cut off, and it had been hung on a tree.
Oh my gosh!
And so that's when that was a rumor, but it seemed pretty obvious because he was a pretty regular person. And so when he stopped coming, then we became pretty nervous.
So what was the situation like then? What did your grandfather do after that?
Well, my grandfather tried to persuade my grandmother to leave the neighborhood, but my grandmother did not believe that in such a gentle neighborhood, only a few hundred yards, where we had Muslim friends who had reassured us that everything was going to be all right, that there would be any kind of violence. And she was convinced that we would be staying there. But one night, when we were up on the second floor, top of the second floor, at night a bullet came flying. Then she was persuaded that we would have to leave.
Oh.
At that point, there was a captain who lived in our neighborhood in one of the three houses. He was an active duty officer who could not leave, but he had two children that had to be taken out of the country. So he cut a deal with us that if we would take his children who were teenagers out of the country, then that he would arrange for us to take us, arrange us to go through the military train that was leaving the Chaklala airport. That is even today the largest airport in Pakistan.
Now, what month was this? This was already past
This-
partition or before partition?
This was right. I had heard the fireworks exploding, celebrating the
Pakistan's independence? Oh, I see.
Pakistan's independence. So it would have been September,
Okay.
and so we agreed that we would be happy to take care of the children of this captain.
That captain was Muslim?
No, this captain was a Hindu,
Oh.
and
Also from Rawalpindi.
also from Rawalpindi. He was a neighbor,
Okay.
and he had opted to
Go to India.
go to India.
Okay.
And my father was at that time deployed in Malaysia
Oh.
in service,
Okay.
and so he could not be with us. My grandfather, as I said, was a retired senior military officer, but he was left to his own devices to take care of the family. And so
how did you leave?
well, so as I just said, this captain then arranged for us to go by a truck to the
Chaklala Airport.
Chaklala airport, and with no clothes or any other,
No extra clothing.
no extra clothing, just what we had on, and whatever cash was available to us at that time, which was very little. So we were driven at night to the Chaklala airport, where there was a train connection, and we were pushed into the coaches. They allowed us to go in because the captain said we were part of his family.
Okay.
And because there was so much confusion at that time, they let us in. And the moment we got in, the train started. It was supposed to stop in Lahore, and then on to India, and then we did not know where we were going.
So where did we go? Did you go?
Well, where we did go, we were supposed to. We did not know where we were going, so when we were supposed to stop in Lahore, we could not because it was night, and there were rumors that there would be firepower. The Muslims had arranged, and the Indian Army arranged some soldiers with the engine drivers, so they could not stop there. Because the idea was to stop the train and massacre the entire Indian soldiers there, as well as whoever was there, because mostly that train had soldiers who were not fully armed. But then the idea was to stop that train and massacre everyone.
I see.
But since the rumor was found true, these soldiers that were posted with the drivers, they forced the drivers not to stop the train. And so when we woke up in the morning in Jalandhar.
Oh, you had already crossed over to the Indian border side.
Indian border, right. We hadn't gone that far, but when the train did stop, it was morning, and the train was, full of bullets. Because the Muslims had made the train into nothing but, it was totally, it was completely ridden with bullet holes all over.
Anybody in your compartment got injured, you know?
We did not know if anybody was hurt because we were up in front. And there might have been people who were hurt, but no one could know what was really going on. But the train stopped right after, because we ran out of coal and water for the engine. So the train stopped right after it crossed Lahore.
But within Indian territory?
Well, it was within Indian territory at that time. Actually, yeah, right, it was within the Indian territory. But there was a river in flood, so that's where it stopped. Bias, I think, the river. So the train could not go any further, but we had to stop there. And the next thing was where to find the food. The army had food provided to them, but since we were the only civilians, we did not know where to go look for food. So the question was,
what did you do then?
What did we do? My grandfather sent me.
You're a 9-year-old boy.
I was a 9-year-old boy. My mother was pregnant, and my grandfather sent me out to look for food in the surrounding village. At the same time, we did not know when the train would start. And anyway, there were rumors the train would be there for 2 days or 3 days, or it might start any time. But we were hungry also at the same time. So I went into the village, and there were Sikhs who had prepared food and were preparing food. They had kitchens they had improvised, and they were making food right there on the spot.
Were the refugees? 6 were also, or
No, they were
residents?
They were resident in the
village.
In the village,
Okay.
And so they were providing food for refugees, whoever had come, and they ran out of food because there had been so many refugees, and so they added water to dal,
Okay.
and they added salt
Make it a little more.
to extend the
Okay.
food. So there was no special treatment for young boys or older ladies or anyone. Everyone had to stand in line.
So did you take it back to your compartment, or you
Yeah, I had to wait my turn, which was like almost all day.
Oh.
But I didn't know whether to wait that long or to worry about whether the train was still there. But anyway, I waited long enough. Luckily, the train was still there. So I took that food for my family, and I found my family back there.
But the military didn't share their food with you?
The military, they had enough for themselves, and they had actually been taken out into their own tents, so they could not come out to come out and be with the civilians.
Okay. Now, so how long were you in the train?
We were there for 2 days.
2 days in the train?
In the train.
Okay. And then?
And then the bridge was fixed.
Oh, it was a problem with the bridge?
Bridge.
Not with the supply of coal?
No. Well, that too, but because of the flood.
Oh, I see.
And the engines then came from India, bringing the coal and water. And so once all that logistics was taken care of, then the train moved.
So you stayed there for 2 days?
For 2 days.
And then where did you go?
Then we went to Jalandhar, and then the military disbanded there, or they were sent to their destinations, and we didn't know where they went, and we didn't know where we could go.
Yeah.
And that happened to a lot of people.
Okay.
The Jalandhar station was full of refugees.
Okay.
So luckily at this point, one of my uncles had been posted there as a police officer.
Okay.
And well, of course, there were no phones, but he came looking for people were sending word, if you see your relatives, let us know. And so he had sent word, and we had sent word to see if he could find us. So luckily we made that connection, and then he had some friends who took us in their house. And then we stayed with them for about 10 days.
Okay.
But then they had lots of other people who needed room. So ultimately we wound up staying in an old abandoned house that had been abandoned by a Muslim family.
Okay.
So for a few days we stayed there. My mother delivered one of my sisters, and then
so her delivery was helped by your relations, not in hospital.
No, there was no question. There was no hospital functioning as such, And then the captain somehow made connection with us, and he took his two children who had been quite unhappy the way things had gone. And human nature being what it is, the children blamed that things had not been taken care of for them. But anyway, then my uncle's in-laws lived in a small village near Ludhiana. And his father-in-law was a physician, and there was an old abandoned mud house. So we wound up living in that. We fixed it as a mud house. My father was still in Malaysia, and so now we were somewhat.
You had a roof over here.
We were living under a roof, and so that's where we began to.
You went to go to school, and that became your home.
That became our temporary.
What was the name of the village?
The village was called Sunnyvale.
Sunnyvale.
And it was about 7 miles away from Ludhiana.
Ludhiana. Do you still have connection there, Sunnyvale?
No, not anymore. It's been so long.
Okay. So then what did you move after Sunnyvale? How many years you stayed in Sunnyvale?
Probably 1 year, because the time I'm losing track of time. But about a year. And then my grandfather wrote to the army headquarters to find out where my father was. And then he came, and then he was posted in Lucknow. And he took my younger brother there, and the rest of the family, the newborn, and the other 2 sisters that I had. And I was left with my grandparents in that house.
So you're the big boy, protecting your grandparents.
Oh, that's right.
Now, what happened to your house in Rawalpindi?
Well, supposedly we were supposed to give in exchange for that some vouchers so that we could find an equal housing in India. But since my father was out and away, we did not get around to taking care of that. So after many years, that voucher became useless because most of the properties had been, most of the vouchers had been taken care of that way.
So, but you had your voucher?
We had the voucher, but it was worth nothing.
Okay, because it was not acted upon
in time.
But when did you get that voucher?
The voucher, it took several years because we made an application. It had to be verified that we had a house. They had to evaluate how much it was worth. Then they gave us some kind of a voucher saying, yes, it was indeed worth this much, which was not really that much, according to
them.
Yes.
Okay.
And then there were brokers in between, who would collect these vouchers, and then the value of these vouchers started coming down. And after many years, they were not worth much. So we wound up with a very small mud house.
That Sunnyvale.
No,
In Lucknow?
in Yamuna Nagar.
Or Yamuna Nagar in suburb of Delhi.
Yamuna Nagar is a town in
Haryana?
Haryana.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is outside Delhi or a little farther away from Delhi?
Yeah, it's about 250 miles.
Oh, then it's far. Yamuna Nagar
Yeah.
is really far. Okay.
Yeah, and my father lived there up until this last year when he passed away.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But it was just a
Small area.
very small.
At least you got something, but very small one.
Yeah.
Because the voucher price had gone down by that time.
Right.
Yeah. Now,
But in between, my father had been in the army, so he was posted in Lucknow, Kanpur, Allahabad, and our education was mainly in Allahabad. So, mainly, I say, because we went through Lucknow, Kanpur, Meerut, and all these other cities. Finally,
you did your high school from Allahabad?
my high school was in Agra.
Agra. And we went to college. Where did you go to college first?
In Allahabad.
Allahabad.
And my intermediate college in Allahabad.
Okay.
My degree college in Allahabad.
Okay.
Then my post-degree master's program in Allahabad. And finally, I found a job in Madhya Pradesh.
Okay.
And
You're teaching there?
I taught there for 4 years at master's level.
Master's level.
And there I was fortunate enough to get a Fulbright scholarship,
Okay.
which brought me to the United States.
And you did your further studies here?
In the United States, I received my PhD.
Where did you do your PhD?
At Miami University in
Ohio.
Ohio.
Okay, very nice. So at least in your case, you had some income coming from your father.
That's right.
I mean, that shielded you tremendously. At least some survival.
That's true.
Yeah. Now, do you know any other relatives or any other individuals who became victim, who got hurt, who got killed? Do you know of during this time of partition?
You know, there were several people.
You mentioned your milkman, of course, who was beheaded. Anybody else that got injured and hurt, or?
You know, we were lucky in this respect, but we personally, in our family, there was no one who suffered, or we did not know anyone who suffered any kind of, other than the fact that, you know, we had a very affluent lifestyle, and we became paupers.
Oh yeah.
You know, we had an excellent house.
Asset for so many generations.
Right.
So many.
My father was in the British service as an officer. Also my grandfather. And so we had lived well, and then we had to start all over.
Yeah. Now, do you think, or do you know any other Hindus in your neighborhood who stayed back? Could they have stayed back?
No, as I said, we were only 3 families in our neighborhood.
And rest were Muslim. But they couldn't protect you, or they didn't want to protect you.
Oh, the Muslims, they were the ones who started shooting.
Oh, they shooting through your house and shooting. So yeah,
And they were the ones, who promised
yeah,
they were going to, that
yeah.
we had no reason to
Fear,
fear.
but then yeah. Now, just one question you may or may not know. We are talking about the West, but I'm talking the East. In West Bengal, Muslim minority mostly stayed, but from Bangladesh, mostly Hindu minority couldn't stay. Muslims are majority, Hindus were minority. They couldn't. But on the reverse, West Bengal, Hindus are majority, Muslims are minority. They stayed. Why do you think is the contradiction?
Well, in the Punjab area, the Punjab, the Punjabis and the Sindhis, they were pretty. They were enemies. They pretended. The Muslims pretended that they were friends because a lot of them depended on the educated Hindus.
Okay.
And inside they hated that they had to depend on the Hindus, and the Muslims were they were so conservative. They in fact hated each other, Shias and Sunnis. So they were they hated. Their hatred was much more strong. They wanted to see all the Hindus eliminated.
Okay. Now, did you ever visit your home, or anybody else visited your home in Rawalpindi after they left?
No, not that I know of. I still, I'm afraid to go back to see that neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. Do you know the name of the neighborhood? Any particular name you remember?
My father has left me the address.
Oh, okay.
And
so let me know when you find the address. When people ask you your nationality, what do you say?
My nationality? I still feel I am an Indian.
Of course, and but you do not mention that you are originally from Pakistan.
No.
Which became.
I hate to identify myself as Pakistani.
Yeah. Okay. No. Right. Okay. Now, do you think can Hindus and Muslims live together, or Muslims and Sikhs can live together?
I think Hindus are much more open to live with Muslims, and there are some Muslims who would like to live with Hindus, but the Talibization of Pakistan has made it almost impossible for the Pakistani Muslims hard to live with Hindus.
Okay. I'm almost to the end. So is there anything else that I didn't cover you want to say?
No, I think you've been pretty thorough. This last question troubles me because the population of Muslims throughout the world is so large. To generalize that question and to think that Muslims are represented only by Pakistan troubles me, because there are a lot of Muslims around the world who would be much more open
Okay. Yeah, I hope so.
toward Hinduism
Okay.
than the Pakistani Muslims.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time.